Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to Spiritual Psychic TV and Being Spiritual with me, your host, Ashley Robinson. A warm and special welcome to any new viewers this evening. And it's so fantastic to see so many of our regular viewers come back to watch this live stream. If you're on YouTube and you've never done this before and you want to participate in the show, do remember to log into your account. And once you've done that or you've created a YouTube account, you can engage in the live chat. The other thing that's always really nice to see is you sharing this stream. So remember to click on that forward arrow and subscribe to Spiritual Psychic TV channel, making sure you've clicked on the bell and got all of your notifications to let you know when we're going live. Tonight is a spiritualist philosophy show. The subject matter is being spiritual versus being spiritualist, and a little bit of metaphysics. And for me, I'm looking forward to getting some of your opinions tonight. So do think about your questions. You can ask Ash anything tonight. Stick it in the live chat on YouTube. Or, of course, if you're on Facebook and you're checking us out on Facebook, remember to comment on that main stream, and you can, sorry, I've lost my plot. You can then engage with us. And of course, on Facebook, you can share this stream on your wall, maybe even tag a friend, let them know you're watching Spiritualist Philosophy show tonight. So there'll be no live demonstrations of mediumship this evening. That will be tomorrow night from 8 o'clock. But tonight, we're going to be asking you to talk to us a little bit about metaphysics and spiritualism as a religion versus being spiritual. I'm going to give you some of my opinions and some of my foundation beliefs about why I believe as a spiritualist, which I do see as my religion, is actually much bigger than that. I think that spiritualism is a way of life for me. And the more I think about my spiritualism and the more I think about being spiritual, I'm going to share with you some of my thoughts and a little bit of a dip our toe into the world of metaphysics. So the other thing that'd be really nice to do is to do a couple of hellos and to see who's watching the show tonight and where you are. So do let us know if you're watching the show for the first time, and do let us know where you're watching the show from tonight. It would be fantastic to see that. Of course, if you're watching this on rerun and it wasn't the 30th of July, about 8:05, we get these comments in much slower time. And I sometimes get people ask questions in Facebook a couple of weeks later. So do watch the old shows, but remember, we won't be able to see those comments. Wonderful to have Richard in our studio this evening producing the show, and he will give me your comments up on my screen here, where I'll start to see a few bits and pieces that come in. So Mary Dixie, my circle leader, my last circle leader there, good evening to you. Terry Wall, happy 1 year anniversary for being spiritual. Yeah, last show was that anniversary thing. It's great to see this show 1 year on. It's what's inspired me actually tonight to talk a little bit about metaphysics. Karen Walsh, good evening to you too. Dennis Casey, hiya. Lynn Taylor, hello there. Hello Benny, welcome my friend. Lovely Julie Caswell. You've always got some good difficult questions, Julie. Joanne Lewis says hi to everybody and on the live chat. Some flowers and hearts there, lovely. Nat Grant says good evening. Hiya, Nat. Jade Fleming, hello. Hope Zabi, hi everyone. It's me, Lynn. Hello, Lynn. Karen King says good evening to me and everyone. Hiya, Karen. Mandy Johnson, hello to you. Anthony King says good evening to everyone. And the lovely Karen Goddard. Hiya, Karen. Kaylee Daggett, hello. Good evening, welcome. Nicola Humphreys, good evening to you too. Hiya, Kelly. Kelly Pullum. Ray Robinson, who's that strange fella? Hello, Ash. Have a great show, Mum and Dad. Hello, Mum and Dad. My biggest fans. Hi, Helena Brown. Good evening to you. Sarah Burston. Good evening, everyone, from Gloucester. Hiya, Sarah. Ross Smith is joining us from Essex and watching for the first time. Hiya, Ross. Moon Spirit, hi from Texas. I do love Texas. I've only visited the once in Houston, but a beautiful part of the world, some great people. Hiya, Tricia. Christine Davis, welcome back. Hi, Christine. Sue Hall says, first time from watching from Broadstairs, Kent. I've got my godchildren down in Broadstairs in Kent this week. Hiya, Lynn Taylor from Canvey Island. Hiya, Lynn. Diane White. Hi, Barnsley, South Yorkshire. Lovely. Lovely. Another beautiful part of the world. And Jennifer Rogers joins us from Oklahoma. Lovely. Hiya, Jennifer. Sylvia Freeston says, good evening, Ash, from Bedford. Used to have some good friends in Bedford. Jump on that old train in Croydon, the slow train up to Bedford. Hope none of you are trolls and spammers. I'm revealing a few personal information tonight. Zara Birchall, I'm new to this. Well, hiya, Zara. Say it's Spiritualist Philosophy Show. And if you're new, ask me anything and ask the community anything. Share your opinions. Jerry Perrin, hiya. Natasha. Hiya, Natasha. Natasha J. Is that Degueno? I hope I've pronounced that correctly. Hello from RI. Hi there. Welcome. Sheena Lightheart from rainy Scotland. We've had some crazy downpours in the south today in huge amounts. Krish Pilley. Hi there from Holland. Hiya, Krish. Millie B. Watching from Ballon Virtual Hug. I thought that was all together there. Balham Virtual Hug. I thought that was perhaps part of Holland. I think it's Balham, South London. I was there last night, all through there. Hiya, Teresa Farmer from Wickford, Essex. First time here. I'd like to look forward to your questions too. Then, hiya, Sharon. Sharon Hennessy. Welcome. Denise from New York City. Beautiful place. Played some great rugby in Manhattan against the FDNY. Bonnie Roots. Hello, everybody. Hiya, Bonnie. Kelly McKeaton, welcome back to you. Big love to you too. Lucy Ellery, hello everybody. Hey Lucy. So I think we've managed to get round to all of you. If I haven't mentioned your name specifically, I'm sorry, but a warm welcome to you. And for those that have only joined in the last minute or so, so tonight is all about spiritualist philosophy. It's a chat show in many ways. I'll be doing most of the chatting, but if you chat in the window, I'll be able to answer your questions. And I say, be really good to get your opinions. There's no demonstrations of mediumship or free readings tonight. That's tomorrow night at 8 p.m. and Sunday morning plus midweek. Do subscribe to the channel for those. But this evening is an opportunity to talk about being spiritual. And as I set out at the beginning, for me, I wanted to picture the show as being spiritual versus being spiritualist. And what is the difference? I mean, this show is called Being Spiritual. It's about me sharing my spirituality. And I think the word spirituality, you could kind of thread that through almost every major religion in the world. But what does being spiritualist mean? Well, we've often spoke about my own belief in that, my own principles. And as a spiritualist medium, I see one of my major objectives is to prove life after that change we call death, to give evidence of life after death. Hiya, Joe. So being a spiritualist then, as a religion, and I spoke about it on as a way of life, for me being a spiritualist, we go back to those aims. We did an entire show, didn't we, dedicated to the aims and principles of Wimbledon Spiritualist Church and other major organisations. Hiya, Lenny. And I want to share some of my thoughts of that. We've often spoke about the person representing religion and the person representing science that got into a huff and walked off in different directions. And I also want to share a couple of chapters from one of my favourite books. Hiya there, Levy B, and talk Levi B. Thank you, Richard, for correcting me. Levi B. Hi, good evening to you. Yeah, I want to share a little bit about that, which kind of links us into metaphysics and start getting people talking about that. Because as a couple of people alluded to, we're 1 year in. And the first ever show I did on here was What and Who is God? And ultimately, I came to the conclusion that, in my opinion, God, be that mother or father God, actually was the representation, almost an umbrella for absolutely everything, for energy. And I want to get into that a little bit more tonight as we think a little bit more about metaphysics and why I think that religion and science are actually coming close and meeting together. So I'm going to talk a little bit about metaphysics and a little bit about energy and a little bit about spiritual versus spiritualism. And if we think about the last 12 months, and even for those that have come here for the first time, and you've got some questions, then throw your questions as they come in, because I've been brought up in spiritualism. I'm 39 this year, and I've got almost 39 years experience of spiritualism. But it's my spiritualism, isn't it? It's the spiritualism as influenced to me by my friends and family, my church family. And what does it really mean? For me, above and beyond the principles, as I say, it's about this belief. So not now as a spiritualist meaning, but as a spiritualist, it's me having an absolute belief, hi Gina, in life after life. Life after the life we live as a human being in this third dimension in our bodies. It's about that life, and it's about evidence of doing that through mediumship. It's about the gift and power of spiritual healing. And in terms of where it fits in to religion and sort of science, there was a couple of things I wanted to share about some of the research I had done. Because as you go further back in history and you think about the concept of what we now understand as science, there's some really interesting things that caused a huge amount of conflict, fatal conflict, back in the early days. But actually, as you start to see religion and spiritualism, religion, science, all of those things starting to come together. So 39 years into spiritualism, my own understanding of what it is to be spiritual is changing. And I think I've mentioned on this show before that for a long time, I used to refer to myself, and it's my own label, I used to refer to myself as a Christian spiritualist. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that my father worked at a Christian spiritualist organization, the Greater World. There are some amazing teachings within that from Zodiac and others. These days, I refer to myself as a spiritualist, although I personally still accept the leadership, Jesus Christ. I think that he was a fantastic leader. There's some really great inspirational messages that sort of come out of him. But I'd be really interested to know a little bit about you and a few bits of yours. So, although spiritualists and most of us, I say, believe in God, as a spiritualist, and certainly from my point of view, we talk about God not being a personality. It's not even a he. I spoke about mother, father, God. For me, God within spiritualism is energy, a force, or the force, as in may the force be with you, a power. In fact, spirit. God is spirit. So what does that mean? The first principle then for me around the fatherhood or motherhood or father-motherhood of God and prayers within spiritualist churches and addresses, most people that I know when they're working in a church in particular as opposed to a centre and a theatre start with an opening prayer. Dear God, or Mother, Father God. I think that adding gender to it has been something that we as humans have wanted to do for a long time. And like in legal law, he has dominated because gender equality hasn't been there. But if we think about all the different ways that people identify with gender now, is mother, father, God necessary? Perhaps not. But God themselves is very rarely or consistently defined through spiritualism. This kind of gets into the point about the way I see spiritualism. So I don't know if I even consider spiritualism as a religion. It is a religion, and I am religious in that I am spiritualist. But is it a religion when I compare it to its peer group religions? Or is my spiritualism, therefore me being spiritual, my way of life? And is that what then becomes my religion? There is no one single book, no holy book within spiritualism. There's no national consistent or international consistent book within spiritualism. And that for me is one of the regions where you sort of say, if you think about other major religions, there's almost always at the source a single version of the truth, a written book of some sort. So in spiritualism, there is no holy book that has to be specifically read or studied or learned or recited. But spiritualists use quotations from many, many spiritual sources. We just spoke about Zodiac and the teachings of Zodiac. Silver Birch, another big inspirer for me. And all of the great mediums that have come through, in the last 20, 30 years that have told us about their guides and some of their teachings and some of the physical mediums and their guides. Spiritualists, as I say, use quotations from many, many spiritual sources, including perhaps automatic writing, inspired writing, recordings or lectures in physical mediumship or trance. There is no main historical or mythical figure, saint, prophet, guru who has to be revered, followed, or obeyed. But within the spiritualist circle, there are, of course, many characters, often characters that no longer live a 3D sort of life on Earth. Again, we speak about our teachers and our founders. Of course, as a Christian spiritualist, you might say that there is a single book. It's the Holy Bible, and that actually your Christianity is a foundation, is what he believes. I also know people that now would consider themselves perhaps Catholic spiritualist. In fact, my 6-year-old and 3-year-old on the recent census, one was a Catholic spiritualist and one was a spiritualist Catholic, in order to maintain balance in our house. My wife considers herself Catholic. She preaches as a Catholic. She attends Catholic church, but she also attends spiritualist church. She's a trained spiritual healer. So labels are private in the same way that religion is private. But within spiritualism, no international single main historical or mythical figure. Now, Julie Caswell, that's on the show tonight, also my mum, I've done some brilliant research into what they refer to as spiritual ambassadors and ancestors, the pioneers within spiritualism. Most people, when we talk about modern spiritualism, still go back to the state of Washington. Was it the state of New York in America, and the Fox sisters and their mediumship. But if you think about spiritualism as a religion, no single main historical or mythical figure. Now, there are many, many spiritual, some people would call them masters, leaders, ascended masters, and most of them can be linked to actual characters, physical, humanoid characters, historical figures. Julie says that she thinks of herself as a spiritualist, not Christian spiritualist. God I see as energy, the universe of not being individual. Yeah, absolutely, Julie. So thinking then about these spiritual teachers, leaders, masters, most of whom were historical figures. And to a certain extent, I've already mentioned Jesus. And I've said I no longer consider myself a Christian spiritualist, but I accept the leadership of Jesus Christ. And in fact, for me, Jesus the master, Jesus the teacher, Jesus the lecturer, he's someone that didn't just have authority. He was someone who people chose to follow. And I think that some of his teachings are absolutely wonderful. But think about other influences on me and my spiritualism will include Buddha, Saint Germain, a very popular ascended master. We had Ashley Mills on the show the last couple of months, and we spoke about other realms and beings, unicorns, Pegasus. We spoke about the fairy kingdom with Opal. Bradley James says, I'm looking gorgeous. Bradley, you old charming devil. Thank you very much. Totally threw me now. Saint Germain, but none are more important than others. But individually, within our own life being spiritual, spiritualism, of course, some of these characters might have more influence than others. One of the books here, I've got White Eagle, another pioneer for me. Bonnie says she likes to think of as a divine spirit, so it's sexless. Yeah, let's hope heaven's not sexless, though, Bonnie. I'm joking. Heaven can be anything we need it to be, even if we don't have a physical body. But yeah, gender is not so important. So within spiritualism as a religion, in comparison to its peer groups, there is no absolute rigid code of dietary or morality or rules that have to be selfishly followed. Freedom of choice, freedom of interpretation is what's absolute across spiritualism. And I say we dedicate an entire show to principles. And I think most people would have said there was very little that people would have said that the principles of Wimbledon Spiritualist Church were incompatible. And actually, but if you layer all the various spiritual centres, the independent ones, those affiliated to things like the SNU and the Christian Spiritualist Greater World, the New Christian Spiritualist Society, there are lots and lots and lots of common ground. And one of those really important things is that we as individuals have personal responsibility. Every decision we make has a cause and effect. We have to live by our decisions and the effect of that, assuming that every experience that has happened was meant to have happened, very likely. We are responsible. We have free will and we have freedom of interpretation. So, in absence of all of those similarities, comparisons to major religions, can we call spiritualism a religion at all? If we were to, what is the purpose? For me, from a cultural point of view, I take comfort in recognizing my spirituality, me being spiritual, as spiritualism. It's my religion. My good friend Ralph A. Steadman had said several times, and I'm going to quote him now from his book, and this is on his thoughts on spiritualism religion, he said, it exists for one reason only: to teach about and prove the continuation of existence of something after the death of the physical body. So when we went down to that question, Ralph, what is the point of spiritualism religion? Boom. It exists for one reason, Ash: to teach about and prove the continuation of existence of something after the death of the physical body. And those that would consider themselves spiritualists would share that belief. And no doubt the vast majority of you on the show tonight would agree with that principle without having to have any specific labels. So thinking about that then, thinking about being spiritual versus being spiritualist and meaning something different, as human beings, there's a cultural aspect of wanting something familiar, something that we can label, something that makes sense to us. If you go back in history, and I spoke about the modern interpretation or the modern launch of spiritualism, the Fox sisters, if you go back much further in time and you think about religion, there are many facts that talk about the understanding of the universe. Now, what's my dad said? My dad said, relating to or affecting the human spirit or soul as opposed to the material physical things, I am responsible for his spiritual welfare. I'm guessing my dad's quoting something. I've missed the context of that. So it is with very fact the great strength. Yes, I'm looking at my notes. The energies of which the earth is immersed into, baptized in, bombarded are changing. People talk about a spiritual awakening, the age of Aquarius. They are impelling us as human beings in this 3D world, in this experience, to seek for more truth, to find more awareness that reality is far greater than anything which has been imagined to date. And that feels quite exciting. And this for me is all about creating opportunity for people to open up that mind's eye, that mirror or canvas within the eye. And actually, you do see other religious people or religions perhaps becoming more extreme, more committed, because everyone that has that piece of the jigsaw is becoming more passionate, even more convinced that they have the only and the absolute truth. Whereas I'm very comfortable with what I believe. I'm the first person to say, I think I still have just one piece of the jigsaw. And I feel influence that this piece of the jigsaw is important. And if this were a catchphrase, I can perhaps see bigger picture. I can see the bigger picture. I'm elevated and start to imagine what else is there. But there are other people in an extreme way are going in that opposite direction, becoming more violently atheist. More and more people are dropping out of the rat race. Think about the last 12 to 18 months and the pandemic. People are seeking alternative lifestyles, going back to nature, getting out and getting their hour of fresh air, grounding. Others are abandoning any traditional form of morality or behavior, and they're living for the now, for the moment, for that experience. And somewhere somewhere in the middle of all those vast numbers of people who want to know this understanding of the universe and what life is all about. They don't want the dogma and the politics and the trappings of traditional religion. They like and love the opportunity to have freedom of interpretation. And for me, spiritualism as a religion, as an umbrella, is ideally placed to provide people with answers. And it's exciting. I feel that with what's happened and the way we've been forced to live our lives has also given this opportunity to choose how we resume. It's not about returning to normality. It's about establishing the new normality. Hey, Becky. I'm very well, thank you. So, do we have thousands and thousands of people queuing up outside spiritualist churches and centres all over the country ready to come in? No, we don't. But the spiritual awakening is happening. A big part of that, I believe, is also online. Look at this channel, look at this platform, look at what Spiritual Psychic TV has grown into, and look at how it's just tonight brought a handful of people from all around the world. Olivia, good evening to you. Olivia says, everyone's spiritual journey is their own. I believe there are greater energies guiding us. Being aware of all the religions, teachers, and masters helps us to learn and broaden your own knowledge. Very well put, Olivia. And I can't disagree with any of that at all. That's very lovely. So, thinking then about the next steps and the next moves in relation to our own spirituality, for me, this is what gets me interested in metaphysics again. Because where am I being led on my spiritual journey? As Olivia said, it's all about our own. I was first introduced to the concepts of metaphysics by my good friend, Ralph A. Steadman. And it's something that's fascinated me ever since because I actually like science and I like understanding how the world and how the universe works. And I think that while we look back through history, and I'm going to give a little bit more about that with science and religion, we only have to go back hundreds of years and see how so-called scientists were treated by religions and traditional churches. Actually, I think that we are all coming together, and there are more opportunities. So, to quote Ralph Steadman, I'm going to read that sentence again, the analogy he gave. Two men stood back to back on the equator. They went off in opposite directions, one to the east and one to the west. As they travelled, they grew apart, until when halfway through their journey, they were at their most distant from each other. But then something strange started to happen. As from this point, the further they travelled, the closer they came together, until eventually, on the other side of the earth from where they started, they met face to face. Ralph went on to say that he believes this is the analogy of what's happening right now between science and religion. At one times, all scientists were religious, and many of the religious houses had their own monk and scientists and divisions. But then, in the late Middle Ages, science and religion parted company when the Christian church refused to accept that the earth was not the centre of the universe. It even burnt famous characters like Giordano Bruno, and they burnt the church, burnt them at the stake for him daring to maintain the scientific truth that the planets rotated around the sun. But with the invention of the telescope, the matter was proved, and an uneasy truce was called, in which everything that concerned practical matters was the province of science, where all matters of philosophy came under the scope of religion. But in the modern scientific revolution and the latest discoveries of quantum physics, scientists are coming dangerously near to what some enlightened theologians have been talking about for centuries. In fact, they are almost at the level where they will find their last link in the scientific chain, the building blocks of the universe. And at that time, paradoxically, scientists will prove the existence of God. Unfortunately, most religions will still be far from the meeting point. Many are still arguing about the correct name of that creative force. So, that is the area that Ralph was exploring. That was the seed that Ralph planted in my mind and gave me that thirst around metaphysics. And I loved that analogy. It made me go off and question more things. One of my favorite lectures that Ralph ever gave was what he believed was God, which led me to reinforce my beliefs around God as a force, as a spirit. So I did more research on some of the church and science characters, and I think it was Galileo, 1564 to 1642. So he supported the same views about the poor chap that was burnt at the stake. He was forced to recant and go back on his ideas, and then in 1633 was sentenced to his house for imprisonment for life. But in 1609, when he was working on improvement of an existing drawing of a quite primitive telescope, he created a much more powerful one. And that eventually proved that the scientists were right. It led to the church having to admit that they were wrong. And it gave rise to an era where it was generally argued that anything concerning the physical universe, as I said, was that province of science. So Olivia says, what a brilliant analogy. Completely agree. What's the book called again? Well, almost anything by Ralph A. Steadman will have a reflection to this, but A Practical Spiritual Primer by Ralph A. Steadman. That's a very good sort of A to Z. Lots of analogies in there, and I wish I'd met Ralph when I was at school. I think would have learned a lot more. He had a great way of taking quite complex issues and making them much easier. So let's think then about religious people, religious leaders within religions and spiritualism. Let's think about all the philosophy and the physiological ideas and shows like mine. Let's think about those people looking for the literal truth of all of those things like biblical stories and scientific texts about the creation. Bonnie Root says traditional religion puts us in a church. God the divine didn't ever say we should only celebrate our beliefs in the church. For me, I celebrate my spiritual journey every day. I don't need the house of God to do this. Surely the earth is the house. Absolutely, Bonnie. We make our own house. So thinking about these characters, these scientists, these religious leaders, thinking about what's going on now, thinking about the quantum physics, some of the lines between religion and science becoming very, very blurred indeed. Particularly when you take scientists that have perhaps a traditional upbringing around religion versus scientists that consider themselves atheists, are actually finding that they are agreeing with particularly spiritualists about the creation of the universe. Jennifer Rogers says, I believe the pandemic put everyone in time out to regroup. Yes, Jennifer, that's a lovely way of saying it. So what will happen then when all these scientists who are very close to reaching that meeting point, what will they do when they find, probably to some of them to their horror, they have finally proved the existence of God, of this spirit divine energy, and that is actually at the core of almost every major religion and thinking. I think it's exciting. I don't necessarily think it's going to happen in my lifetime. But again, I think it's worth thinking about that creative force. And whatever we call it, it's up to us to feel comfortable with it. I recognize the love that comes from that force. I recognize the power of prayer and the power of spiritual gifts like healing that come from within that force. I believe that that place my consciousness goes to after my physical death is a place I call heaven, aka the spirit world, a place of pure thought, of pure energy. And that although I'll have no need for a physical body, being attached to the personality, one of the first things I'll probably do when I'm able to do is to create a spiritual version of my body, minus of any of those imperfections. So some of these enlightened members of science, some of these enlightened members of religion, and I do put spiritualists, most spiritualists, vast majority of spiritualists within that group of enlightened religious thinkers. They'll be collaborating, they'll be engaging, and they'll end up collaborating on projects of common interest. And I think we will see that more and more again. And how exciting would it be if we start to see even more collaboration about things like that gift of healing? I mentioned my wife, and as a Catholic, spiritual healer, trained with the wonderful Reverend Leslie Morton at Women of Spiritualist Church. And you talk about spiritual healing. You talk about spiritual healers in hospitals and hospices, people asking for that power of prayer. Within the Church of England, there are established places where spiritual healers come to help. Just imagine how exciting it would be when more religions start collaborating with scientists and they start looking at that gift of healing and that power of prayer and they start working on it together. Very exciting indeed. Other people might just choose to ignore the things they see with that, even with the facts, and that may lead them to some of their more sort of extreme views. Lots of studies say quantum physics isn't actually that new if you go back far enough, but many studies have been done over the years to try and provide answers around, say, mediumship or psychic abilities. And if you Google this, you'll see it on YouTube, lots and lots of inquiries. But in my opinion, the vast majority of them were led by people doing experiments that already had a bias. And the vast majority of them, from the stuff that I have seen, were almost setting out to sort of show that there was no psychic ability, particularly within spiritualism, there was no mediumship ability. So I think that in order to do this properly, we need totally impartial people conducting these experiments in the same way that your hypothesis is important as part of that experiment. But actually, you're going to go by the facts and the results as we look at things like the gift of healing, the power of prayer, the ability of mediums to give evidence of someone's life after their life. All of this, for me, leads me to think that being spiritual, being spiritualist, absolutely, just as I believed, it's our own private, personal label. And if I respect everyone around me and what they choose to call themselves, even if they choose to call themselves nothing at all in particular, what a wonderful place that would be. Jennifer Rogers said, so he was sentenced to imprisonment in his house, gave him time out to become one, coming up with a telescope. Am I not understanding? Thank you. Yes. So basically had a telescope, maintained the views of the chap that was burnt at the stake, that planet Earth just revolved around a sand that was something much bigger, as opposed to everything being the center of the church. But yes, while he was sentenced to imprisonment in his home, he made an even better telescope, which ultimately proved that he was right all along, and it kind of compelled the church to do it. But yeah, Google him. There's a lot of really quite fantastic things. So I want to finish this show with how we started the first one 12 months ago, which is to think about some of those religious scripts I like, and one of my favorite paragraphs. Rosie Anderson says, science and religion both seek the truth. At one time, they were entwined, just as Ash stated. I believe that this will one day be the same. Yes, Rosie, absolutely agree. So, again, this was another Ralph Steadman. It's the final paragraph I'm going to quote. And Ralph was a Bible study student. He did an awful lot of research over 50, 60 years. And he had said to me that the passage in the Bible, two of the opening verses of the Gospel of St. John, always puzzled him. Let me read it to you. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And by him were all things made, and without him nothing made which was made. And Ralph started on a journey of thinking, what was the word? What on earth does that passage really mean? But it took Ralph 50 years. I was lucky. I had the fast track lesson learnt that he planted that seed with me. The missing word was energy. So, substituting energy for the word, the passage now reads, in the beginning there was energy, and energy was with God, and energy was God. By it were all things made, and without it nothing was made. Now that chapter made complete sense to Ralph. And as soon as he told me, that chapter made complete sense to me. What St. John was stating was a very basic scientific fact. If the interpretation of that passage is correct, then what theologians say about God and what scientists say about energy should bear some resemblance to each other. So let's see if they do. Scientists say that energy has always existed and will always exist. Theologians, spiritualists, religious folks, they say that God is eternal. Scientists say that energy is infinite. Theologians say that God is infinite. Scientists say that everything was produced out of energy, and religious folks say that God created everything. Scientists say that you cannot create or destroy energy. Religious folks say that you cannot add to or take away from God. Scientists say that although you cannot create or destroy energy, it can be changed into many different forms. Religious folks say that God manifests himself in different ways. Spiritualists go a step further and talk about the manifestations of the Spirit. So, I hope you'll agree with me that even looking at just those few examples, it is fairly obvious and a very strong possibility that when scientists are talking about energy, and religious folks are talking about God, they are talking about exactly the same thing. Although both sides would dispute that fact, apart from perhaps spiritualists within religion, recognizing and understanding that divine presence. So, I hope that this is the start of your journey into metaphysics and it plants some seeds. And just as Rosie said there, science and religion, it's all about seeking the truth. Spiritualism, we spoke about sharing our knowledge of life after death, sharing the truths of spiritualism. And as a community, internationally, spiritualists would agree on those principles. And this show over the last 12 months has taken you on a bit of a journey about what makes me spiritual, about what my spiritual understanding, my spiritualist philosophy is. And of course, we've all got slightly different opinions. And I always caveat my opinion with the fact it was mine. It was my opinion as I've come to know it. But folks, I'm really keen to get some questions from you about anything I've said or anything other. I hope that I've inspired some of you to go off and do a bit more research into quantum physics or metaphysics. It's a pretty difficult subject, and I don't know if I'll ever complete my study in this life without my good friend Ralph to help me through the really complex stuff. But it absolutely fascinates me. And like Rose, I believe it will all come back. And as Terry says, it all comes back to energy and understanding that term energy. And for me, I take great pride in incarnating a prayer to Mother, Father, God, and understanding the power of that spirit. But I don't see God as an individual, as a character. I do see God as the sum particles of all the energy in the universe. Millie B says energy is forever. You can't have any death from energy, and I believe our souls are energies, and that's what lives on forever. Absolutely, B. I've said in here before the difference between a human being and a corpse is the absence of that energy that we call the personality or the consciousness. And it is that energy of the personality which survives after the physical death that the body goes through. And of course, we can change the energy and the atoms behind the physical body through a cremation or through burial, through body rotting, but the physical energy goes on. Suzanne Riches is saying hi to everybody. Hiya, Suzanne. And folks, as I say, now's a great time to get in your questions. I can continue to waffle on and talk about my limited understanding of metaphysics and quantum physics and what it means to me, but it'd be really great to get your questions. Nat says, do you find it hard to separate spirits coming through to you in your everyday life? Nat, at the moment, no, I don't. Did I in the beginning? Yeah, absolutely. I think that spirits are around us all the time, and evidence of their personalities is around us all the time. I think that the spirit world, this world, heaven and earth, it all kind of coexists in a perfect harmony. And for me as a medium, it's all about understanding that level of attunement. And without discipline and practice and sitting in circle and learning how to switch on or switch off, getting that attunement just right, understanding the vibrations, it was challenging. And as a young man, I found it overwhelming. I found it exciting to play with friends that other people couldn't see. As a teenager, as all the hormones are running through your body, start to experiment with a bit of alcohol and staying up later and not sleeping, all those types of things. My body became to a point that it was difficult to separate spirits. But again, that for me is when I started my formal training, learning to close off, shut down, switch off, ground myself, all of those types of different definitions. And that for me starts with finding someone you trust, a circle leader, attached to either an independent or a church, and learning exactly how to do that. And then learning how to work with your own guides, your principal spirit guide who looks after you on a day-to-day basis, that's dedicated their spiritual life to your entire human life. If you're going to work in mediumship, asking for those guides to make themselves known to you and for them to help. And I've mentioned, if you ever see me do the live mediumship on this show, I talk about Bob, my old friend Bob, who I knew very well, and he's like my doorkeeper. He's like my bouncer between this world and the spirit world. But all of that exists in my own mind, and it's how I contextualize the evidence that I'm getting. So nice question there, Nat. Hopefully I've answered it. And so keen to get your other questions, folks. Millie B says, can I ask, if you're interested in spiritualism, can it help you to become a more positive person and overcome difficult times in life? Absolutely. Do you have to have a gift, or can you get into it for your own reasons? Absolutely both, Millie. I believe we all have the ability to attune, to link in, to receive influence or inspiration from the spirit world. We have our own free will and accord. We march to that. We march to the beat of our own drum. In order to get assistance, we have to be aware that there are people to ask. We have to know they're there, and then we have to ask for them. But yes, I think that the secret to being truly authentic, to bringing all of ourselves out of the shell, to being the best possible version of ourselves, is to recognize that there is something greater than ourselves. And at times to surrender ourselves to the will of something greater than ourselves, to ask for help, to ask for inspiration, to ask for advice. And in doing those things, it can help you get over those difficult times, even through the gift of healing. But the gift side is an interesting thing. And I'm going to go off on a slight tangent between the difference between gift, talent, and demonstration. I believe everyone is entitled to use spiritual gifts, which include, but not limited, mediumship, healing, things like that. When you come to this place, Earth, and you incarnate in this life, I think that some of us, as a consciousness, as a soul that have just come from that place I call heaven or the spirit world, are more naturally attuned to those gifts and more naturally able to use them. And if it's someone like me that's been brought up in that family life of spiritualism, then you continue to play with those gifts. You see healing as a very natural thing. So I don't mean play in a disrespectful way, but you start to use them and attune to them. Other people, it takes certain experiences in their life to get them to the point they are to even be aware of the possible existence of those gifts and how they may use them. Ultimately, it's all about your life and living your best possible life, being the best possible version of you going forwards in pursuit of happiness, doing those things and going through those experiences, hopefully in pursuit of happiness with people you love, doing things that you love. So Millie B, I hope that answers your question. So I'll take some water and I'll take your next question. Karen King says, my husband could bring spirit forward. He could see them. I couldn't, but I could hear. He had a wonderful spiritual funeral. I've now lost my communication. Karen, I'm sorry he's not physically around now. And it sounds like you two had a special relationship there. And we think about the various clairs, the clairaudient, the clairsentient, the ability to hear or see or smell or feel spirit. It sounds like as a team, that you he could see them and you could hear them, and that was great together. You may have felt that you've lost your communication, and to a certain extent it's almost like having a phone, isn't it? I give you a landline, I plug it in, I tell you it works, and you learn how to operate that phone. But if I unplug the phone, or if I move it, if I make it cordless, I replace it with a smartphone, you have to learn to do it again. So you're aware that that is possible, and what I would say is go and find that device. How do you re-establish communication? And assuming that if it's your husband in particular you wanted to communicate with, that he's looking for a device to help him communicate too. And between the two of you, you'll find your equivalent spiritual walkie-talkies, and you'll be able to have that. But know that they are around you. It's just about clearing anything in our mind which is acting as a barrier, as an obstruction. Thanks, Karen. Nice question, and thank you for sharing your own personal experience there. Bonnie says, so how does the physical energy change when you have passed? Why do they get strong the longer they are in spirit? Well, if you think about the personality or the consciousness of that energy of, take me, Ashley Robinson, in the incarnation with this human body, it's almost like there's various interfaces. I've got my physical body, I've got my spiritual body, and I've probably got 5 or 6 different interfaces and bodies within that have all fused together during that moment of I've forgotten the word calls when you get pregnant. That's bad, isn't it? Conception, at the moment of conception, and then you have incarnation, sort of 9 months later. All of those things are fusing together and forging interfaces. Now, when you finish with your physical body, you have to go through the reverse practice. But the soul or the consciousness, that's what I believe continues to live. And that energy exists in the same way without those interfaces. When you get to the spirit world, which I believe as an afterlife is almost immediate, a lot of the limitations could be limitations you created during your own physical existence. What is your understanding of your life after your life? Are you expecting pearly gates in heaven? That's probably what you're going to get. Do you think there's nothing? Perhaps you find yourself in nothing. Perhaps you had an awful lot of psychological and mental health worries towards the end of your life. And when you've finished with your physical body, you need the equivalent of that rest and relaxation to get over it. And maybe your spiritual friends and angels and helpers take you away in order to do that. Some spirit is through that experience, isn't it? The longer that they exist in that existence, in that form, the more familiar you get. In the same way that we develop skills and sets within our own life. But the physical body has its limitations. We kind of get to a peak, don't we? A peak of physical fitness and strength and other bits and pieces. They say you're never too old to learn, but there certainly are physical and mental conditions which affect our capacity to learn and retain that information. So I think, yeah, for some people, it becomes a learning experience. It also depends, if you believe in reincarnation, perhaps how many times you've done it. How many times have you incarnated a physical human being? Have you done it once? Have you done it 10,000 times? How experienced are you in doing that? How at peace are you with all the different personalities? Now, all the different personalities that are perhaps part of the same soul, how do you keep them separate but together as part of that divine energy? So I think there are lots of things there that I've probably given you more questions than answers. But ultimately, that physical energy that changes is the end of the incarnation and the interface with the physical body. And it's the personality, that consciousness, that soul, which continues to live. And therefore, it's the influence from that spirit world. So, Bonnie, hopefully that answers that. And that's a great question. Thank you. Jade says she kept dreaming the same dream, then it happened for real. Why do I do this? Well, Jade, I mean, it sounds pretty cool, actually, and pretty exciting that you've had that ability to do it. I think there's a couple of different explanations. One could be around the power of now and the power of affirmations. So I'm a big fat guy. I'm losing weight at the moment, which is good because I spent most of my adult life putting on weight, but I'm back on the down. And I visualize it, and rather than visualizing myself losing weight and dreaming about me losing weight, I dream about myself having lost the weight, having been fitter and healthier and stronger. And the more I make those affirmations and the more that then translates in my dream state, the more I want to do it. And therefore, it's about me making that reality. And people that are really big on affirmations can talk about the fact that you can get yourself to do anything. So there's the whole point of dreaming, about dreaming big and having ambition and affirmations, could be that you're willing yourself to get there. The other part of it is that in the same way I spoke about all these different interfaces, although I think predicting the future with great accuracy is particularly hard to do, perhaps your spiritual self and your spiritual guides who influence your dreams, they're just like in the equivalent of a helicopter. So they're levitating slightly higher in the world than you are. And because they're slightly higher, they can see a bit more. They can see perhaps a journey you were on. And, I live in South London, and Thursday night I went into Central London for a rugby club AGM. We had a brilliant meal. If anyone ever finds himself in the English restaurant in the City of London, I know the head chef, play rugby with him, fantastic food. Um, if I want to do that journey home from the city of London to my home, and that's going to happen in the future, there is an aspect of someone that knows that I can only get there several ways. I can walk, I can bike, I can train in tube, I can get off at different station and interface. And it may be that spirit friends and inspirers in that helicopter can see that and think, do you know what? I can see you getting there because you really want to get there. It's your ambition to get there. That's your finish line at home. And therefore, I'm going to influence you in the way that I think was get you there faster or safer or the cleanest way. And it could be an element of you picking up on that. Of course, depending on how much time we have, we could go off on all sorts of other tangents. Perhaps you have the ability to remote view into the future, not just in distance, and those come through in dreams. Or perhaps you have spiritual friends that have seen one of the potential possibilities in the future, and they're trying to give you an image of that. What you could do is experiment with it and sort of in your conscious mind, challenge the communicator of the dream. Is it your inner self? Is it you wanting things to happen? Or is it that things are being given to you? Recognizing the gift, asking them to give you something which you can prove and seeing how that goes on. But Jade, thank you for sharing that. That's a really cool thing. And I wish you well with it. There is a few people that can talk about dream interpretations as well, and there's loads of stuff you can see on YouTube and Google. I always forget the lady's name, but there's been a dream analysis on Spiritual Psychic TV. You can look back on that too. Thank you. Joanne Wood, how come I can't connect with my loved ones? I'm a spirit medium myself. I connect others with their loved ones, but never managed to connect with my own. Thank you. I mean, it's a great question, Joanne, and perhaps it is that you're able to connect, but you don't necessarily understand it. I think that the hardest person to read for is yourself and the people you know. And a lot of that, I think, is around the way that we interface with the energy. As a medium, we don't question it, do we? We surrender ourselves to spirit. And if spirits say, I've got someone here who's claiming to be a bloke who says they know the sitter, the client, because they were their dad and they died of X, Y, and Z, and they've got these significant dates or the places they used to live. We don't question that. We don't interpret it. We give what we get as a medium and we deliver it. But actually, the people that we know and love about, it's not like they need to turn up and give us that same sort of evidence, and we don't necessarily challenge them to do so. But in order to avoid an imposter, if I suddenly have a woman with me that is claiming to be my nan, would I recognize it as my nan? Or would part of me thinking, oh, it's just a nice memory of my nan? Whenever I drive past my nan's house, I always remember my nan. And sometimes I feel like she's suddenly with me and she's saying to do something. And what you have to do is you then have to think about a medium. Right, I'm going to challenge my communicator. I'm going to use my guides. And that's an important part of then verifying it. I had some lovely physical phenomena occur a little while ago with some electric and some lights around my grandfather's birthday. And rather than just accept it, you always look for the supernormal. So is the light bulb okay? Is the electrics any dodgy? And then what I basically said is, okay, if this is my granddad, I want you to make that light flash twice. And it flashed twice. And then I said, now I don't want it to flash at all to know there's not a light connection, and I had 5 minutes of it not flashing at all. So it's all about challenging our communicators, working with our own guides. And the other sad thing is that I've never been on that training course where you can be a spiritualist medium and a DJ, where you can take requests. And if we can't take requests from clients that come to us and say, I really want to talk to this person, then we can't necessarily summon up people that are going to come to us. I often find it easier to get a reading for me from another medium for that reason. And it's a difficult interface. So, Joanne, lovely question. I hope I've answered it. You always say, I only give what I receive. However, it would be nice to connect with my children in spirit. Absolutely, Joanne. And just try and maybe do that through a third person. Perhaps use your guides. When I want to talk to my nan, I know what my established relationship is with my mediumship guide or some of my mediumship guide teams. And I say, right, you bring in my nan and give me evidence of her. Now, of course, the evidence exists within my own memories too. So I ask for little confirmations and verifications from my guide as a third party to confirm that it's the right person. And then I just surrender myself. And sometimes I go to sleep with that thought and I ask them to influence me. Other times, and not recently when I've been making personal decisions in my life, I ask them to give me a bit of advice and a bit of guidance. And a few people have said this to me. And again, another one was Ralph Steadman about dedicating something you do in service around unconditional love, dedicating it in celebration of the life of someone that you particularly want to bring close. So I'm making this up, although it's a real person, my nanny Hazel. I really want to communicate with my nanny Hazel. So what I do is tomorrow, when I'm doing something in service, perhaps I'm going to be at the church, I'm watering the garden or something like that, something I'm doing with unconditional love, then what I'm able to do is say, Nan, as soon as I get in the morning, I'm dedicating that to you. Now I'm going to get down to women in church. I'm going to sweep the alleys. I'm going to cut the grass. I'm going to do it to get the church looking nice. And I'm doing it, Nan, in celebration of your life. And I really want you to come close. And I'm doing this in unconditional love. And then perhaps that brings my Nan a little bit closer. And then she recognizes the feeling, that unconditional love. And then towards the end of the night, I say, thank you, Nan, for being with me today. And I hope you felt that. You could see that service I was doing. And you have to be careful, of course, because if you only did it in order to get the communication, it's no longer unconditional love. So you need to get the balance just right and do that service and ask them to come closer. And I've had mixed feelings of then bringing those people in. But I do think that ultimately we get the communicator, we get the message that we're meant to get at that time. Thanks, Joanne. Lovely question. And we are coming towards the end of the night, folks. You've probably got a chance to get in one or two extra questions, and then it'll be adverts, bedtime or dinner time for me. Kerry Sargent says, my lovely mum passed away last month. Kerry, please accept my condolences. You tell us that you've been finding it hard and you've been asking for help for each day. Most of all, I've been asking for my mum to show herself, but it hasn't yet. It disheartens me. Kerry, thank you for sharing that. It's very personal to you. For me, there's questions to ask. You don't have to answer them now, but have you, when you say show herself, have you seen other people from the spirit world show themselves to you? If not, you're going to have to establish how you would do that. As a spiritualist medium, I very rarely see with my eyes. Occasionally I do, but very rarely. Most of the time I see them in my mind's eye. And actually, I find it easier sometimes to close my eyes to help focus on the mirror in my mind's eye as spirits start to make themselves known. So when you've asked your mum to show herself, think beyond your physical senses and think about other ways that she can make herself known to you. Some people say, oh, I'd love a white feather, or I'm looking for a robin, or wouldn't it be great, like my granddad the other day with a physical phenomenon. My granddad's been dead from his physical body for several years, and he promised me he was going straight on the poltergeist course, and he'd be making all the windows rattle and everything like that. But, you know, I think it takes a lot of energy, awful lot of energy to produce any type of physical phenomenon or influence physical phenomenon around us. So finding a way to get to a point in meditation, understanding about your guides. And I've no idea, Kerry, if you're working as a medium, if you've gone through those sort of disciplines of a circle, but just getting to a point of peace where you can relax, you can be in more of a meditative state, you can find your guides, find a waiting area or a meeting area where you can come together. About 3 or 4 weeks ago on this show, we did, it would have been probably 2 months ago, we did a show about meeting your guides. And at the end of that, you can watch it on playback, we did a beautiful meditation about meeting your gatekeeper and meeting your guides. You could use something like that in order to meet your mum, for her to show herself or make herself known to you. Every other Friday, the Reverend Leslie, I was going to call her Leslie Knight, but she was recently married. So I've forgotten his name now. Alistair's, the Reverend Leslie. Someone will remind me Leslie's married name, Alistair's surname. I don't know, I've forgotten it. In it bad. It's because I was talking about your mum, Kerry. But every other week on Spiritual Psychic TV, the lovely Leslie does meditations, and just get yourself comfortable and then ask her to do something different. Ask her to give you a number or a significant number, something like that in your mind's eye, and build it up, build it up, build it up. So Kerry, good luck to you with that. Probably got time for 1 or 2 more questions. Sue Hall says, when do you get a guide to work with you? My grandson has been seeing spirits since he was 2 and he's now 18. Ah, that's lovely. And similar to my own experience. So we did a show, we dedicated an entire show to guides, and then we did the follow-up about meeting your guide, Sue. I believe that when we are conceived and then we incarnate in the physical human birth body and we are born, we already have a spirit guide Mary Dixie says Malta. I don't know if it's Malta, isn't it? Alison Malta. Thanks, Richard. I think that spiritual guide is dedicated their spirit being life to our human life from conception through to incarnation and birth, and they are with us all the time. And I believe that everybody has at least one principal guide. In terms of our team of guides, I think they come and go like teachers. So when we're learning to heal, we get some healing guides. When we're learning to do mediumship, we get our mediumship guides. When we're looking to do more speaking and public speaking, inspirational speaking, we get teams of people to come in and help us with that. Some of them are with us from incarnation, and I think there is a team of people that have been with me since I was quite little. There is a little girl in spirit who first made herself known to my dad as a medium, and she continued to work with him and said, I'm going to work with your son when he's born. And she's given me evidence that she does exactly that. So yes, I think that guides are around us all the time, and it's only once we understand and remember that they're there that we can of course ask them for help. Great question, Sue. And if there's any burning questions, Richard, I'll get another one or two in, and then we'll do some adverts. Having an affirmation, is that the same as manifesting, says Siobhan? Yes and no. For me, the affirmation is, getting up in the morning, look yourself in the mirror and saying, you are healthy, you are slimmer, you are fitter. It is about building up that affirmation and that energy and making it take place by that positive energy. The manifesting aspect of it for me has two flavors. There's the physical manifestation of something. I've got asthma, so I'm manifesting maybe cleaner or better lungs. Part of that is an affirmation. Perhaps I'm manifesting a physical change in my body. So I think they're very cleverly linked intimately to each other. There's the physical manifestation of spirit energy to produce something. Some people may argue that healing it could be an element, particularly those that claim to be sort of spiritual surgeons and things like that. But yeah, an affirmation and manifestation, if it makes it easier, I think it's part of the same family. It's under the same umbrella. Thanks, Siobhan. Millie says, what happens to our energy once we are finished in our human bodies? We exist in a spirit world forever, or is there many realms to still live in? Oh, lovely question, Millie, for us to finish on. I believe there's only one afterlife, but within that afterlife, are there different flavors? Are there different dimensions or realms? I believe there is. And I think that you can probably, if it were a 22-story building, and the top of this building was considered the ultimate sort of evolved state. I believe that once you get to the 22nd floor, you can probably visit any of the floors at any of the time. But I do think that you probably have to work your way through and start at the ground. And indeed, some of the more nasty of us probably end up in the basement first. I mean, don't get anywhere near the lift. It's probably very much restricted. And we find ourselves in a lower sort of force of energy. But I think our energy, once we've finished with our body, continues to exist, but it exists in that spirit world without the physical 3D body. And I think that we can stay in the spirit world or heaven for as long as we want. I personally believe in the concept of reincarnation. And one of the things I'm still yet to fathom out is, right, let's take me. So Ashley Robinson, the human being, the incarnation of Ashley Robinson and my personality. Once I've finished my body, the personality of Ashley Robinson and consciousness goes back to heaven. Now, is it in heaven that you are aware that Ashley Robinson was just one of my incarnations, and I'm now remembering Fred Bloggs and Jane Smith, and all of that is what comes through? Or as a medium, what I tend to get is the personality of the person that just died. And I've never had a situation where someone's come through and says, can you let that woman know that I'm her husband, but actually I also used to be, a barra boy, and I used to sell coal in a previous life. Oh, also was a fisherman in Egypt. So when spirit communications and spirit energies as communicators come through me as a spiritualist medium, they're communicating with the client, the person that they knew, with that personality. And I've always wondered if you can exist in more than one realm dimension at the same place. And we know that atoms and particles of energy certainly can. So that's certainly quite possible. There's also this aspect that Ashley Robinson is just one flavor of a higher self, of something bigger. And of course, if we're all part of this universe, we're all connected in some way to this energy, is it all just part of it? So let's take my pint glass. Okay, I've got a pint glass, just water tonight. Let's say that the glass is the Ashley Robinson vessel. Right? It's the human being. Let's call them, as my old mate Ralph used to, Newman, the new human. So my pint glass from Cheers in Boston is Newman, and inside the water is the consciousness. It's the soul. Once this glass breaks, the body is finished. What happens to the water? Well, in actual water, there's lots of things that could happen. It could soak into the ground. It could evaporate. But let's assume that that water goes to be part of a bigger pool of water. So I take this pint glass and I go to a big bowl or a fountain and I pour the water in. And now the personality, which was what the water represented inside the glass, is now part of this beautiful fountain. And inside the fountain are lots and lots and lots of other people that have all poured their glasses into the fountain. When the personality that was inside the glass, in this case, I was saying it was me, communicates, then even though it's part of something much bigger and it's part at the same time, it still has the ability to remember the personality of Ashley Robinson and communicate. Is it within that pool? Is the fountain part of all the various incarnations? Perhaps some of us live tens of thousands of lives. Or is the fountain even bigger? And you realize that you've got a little bowl within the fountain and the fountain is even bigger and there's more and more to it. So I think we'd need to dedicate several weeks of shows to talk about realms and divisions and dimensions. And I've heard so many interesting things from so many different mediums. What we do know is there is an afterlife. I like to call it heaven, and I like to refer to it as the spirit world. And I do know, because I give evidence of it as a medium, that the personality, the consciousness of the person, that's the difference between the human being and the corpse, that goes to live in heaven, and they're able to stay there for as long as they like. And even though I believe in reincarnation, I think the vast majority of personalities and energies stay there up to and including a point that they've reunited with people that they knew while they were alive. Some people may never reincarnate. Some may do it immediately. There's some really interesting stuff about the Dalai Lama and people like that who they believe reincarnate immediately. But I think you can stay up in heaven, the spirit world, for as long as you like. And I think the vast majority of people, based on my experience of delivering messages from them, is they actually wait up there, usually for 2, 3, even 4 generations of family to reunite in the spirit world. And then perhaps they actually all decide to incarnate around the same time. And you may have heard that phrase, soul groups. Millie B, you're very welcome. Thank you for that lovely question. And I would like, folks, just before we bid you farewell, just to introduce you to a handful of other things that you can find out on the amazing Spiritual Psychic TV. So first thing I would like to let you know is Saturday nights, every Saturday night from 8 p.m, you can find a demonstration of mediumship, and I would like to join you particularly to a very special charity night of which I am involved with, so should have remembered before I went straight into mediumship, is this fundraiser. Now this fundraiser is for the lovely Freya, who's a 14-year-old fighting against leukemia. It's tomorrow night from 8 p.m. Join us. We've got a wonderful panel of regular SPtv personalities who you would have seen. There's some wonderful people. What we're going to have is we're going to have live readings, we're going to have bingo, we're going to have quizzes, competitions, we'll have a good old giggle, and we're going to work in a nice uplifting way. I think my mum and dad are actually coming to me, and we'll be a buy one get free. So we'll all be presenting from my house and joining parts of this show tonight. And of course, we're looking to raise some money that's going to go to a much needed cause. So do join us tomorrow night from 8 p.m. for our fundraiser. Get yourself some live readings. And donate, friends. You can donate now, you can donate tomorrow, but definitely donate if you can afford to give. We ask that you consider this charity as one of those good causes. And a divine service with Wimbledon Spiritualist Church, my home church, the place I call home, every Sunday morning from 11 a.m. You can find the divine service broadcast ordinarily from Women of Spiritualist Church with my mum and dad, Reverends Ray and Jackie Robinson, and all of our lovely church family. You'll have the opportunity of hearing a reading, you'll have an opportunity of having an address, and you'll have free readings from a different spiritualist medium or a spiritual medium every single time. You can check that out on Facebook or YouTube on Spiritual Psychic TV. Oh, the lovely Ricky Whitmore, from from Ralph Steadman's old parish. Actually, I got first introduced to Ricky through Ralph Steadman. Lovely medium and church down near the southwest. I think it's I can't pronounce it. Payton. Yeah, yeah, Peyton. I'm terrible with geography. Southwest. VIP nights, an evening of fledgling mediumship hosted by the lovely Veronica Jenkins, Sunday, 8 p.m. via Zoom. Check us out on Facebook at the SPtv Lounge for the VIPs. And if you don't know what a VIP is, you can become a very important patron. This is a way of keeping SPtv free. And if you're interested in finding out more, why not head over to the SPtv fan group on Facebook, engage with this wonderful community. And there's some brilliant people that I may have never physically met, but I'm proud to call friends as part of this wonderful community. And you get an opportunity as a VIP to do all these incredible things like VIP nights, exclusive Zoom meetings, and demonstrations of chants and other bits and pieces. Okay, I think that is all of our adverts. I would like to thank our producer for all the amazing work he does, for giving us this platform, and particularly for giving me this platform. Billy B says, thank you, you're very welcome. Joanne, thank you, Ashley. Richard, great evening. Love and light to you all. And friends, love and light to you all. Siobhan O'Rourke, thank you, Ashley. You're a brilliant speaker. Thank you, Siobhan. I appreciate you saying that. And thank you for everyone that stayed with us, Ashley, for answering my questions. We look forward to your questions. This show would be even, it'd be nothing without you as the community, and Richard probably wouldn't produce it. So do come in and do ask questions. Thank you, Mary, for your feedback too. Friends, I shall bid you good night and farewell. Stay safe, look after each other, and do pursue happiness. Do things that you love doing with people you love. Good night and God bless. Thank you.